Long-term primate field research is not a contest for the cleverest animal anecdote. It asks who turned years of patient observation into dependable knowledge about wild primates. We are here to determine the GOAT of long-term wild primate field research. The field is long-term wild primate field research. That is unusually hard because primates mature slowly, remember one another, form alliances, raise offspring for years, and can make a brief visit look like a complete social system. The basic method is habituation. Researchers behave predictably until wild animals stop treating them as an immediate threat. Habituation is not taming. The animals remain free, dangerous, and capable of leaving. It gives observers access to ordinary life, but it also creates ethical problems, including altered behavior and exposure to human disease. 4 things define greatness here. The work must produce a genuine scientific surprise, follow enough lives to distinguish patterns from accidents, leave methods that other teams can use, and protect more than a publication record. The strongest research should change how primates are studied and improve the odds that their communities and habitats survive. Before the great field projects, much primate science came from short expeditions, captive animals, museum specimens, or distant glimpses. The long studies changed the unit of evidence. An animal was no longer merely a member of a species. It became an individual with relatives, rivals, habits, and a history that could be checked against tomorrow. Time is the decisive instrument. A dominant struggle seen once may be noise. Follow the same group for 20 years, and researchers can trace inheritance, maternal styles, coalitions, migration, epidemics, and traditions passed between generations. Long observation turns behavior from a collection of scenes into something closer to a biography of an entire society. That time comes at a price. Field stations survive storms, political uncertainty, changing permits, injuries, disease outbreaks, and the unglamorous possibility that the animals simply vanish into vegetation. Researchers also bring expectations with them. Fitting animals to attract them, naming them, or getting too close can improve observation while quietly changing the thing being observed. The contenders built enduring traditions among baboons, gorillas, orangutans, and chimpanzees. This is not a prize for celebrity, courage, or the single most famous discovery. It is the narrower question of who created the greatest body of long-term wild primate field research, judged by surprise, depth, methodological legacy, and conservation consequence. Shirley Strum began following olive baboons in Kenya in 1972. At the time, baboon society was often described as a blunt hierarchy, enforced mainly by aggressive males. Strum's animals were certainly capable of intimidation, but close observation revealed a subtler system built from friendships, negotiation, infant handling, and carefully managed social access. Her work showed why duration matters. Rank alone could not explain who received support or how newcomers entered a troop. Relationships accumulated history, and social intelligence often mattered more than brute force. Strum also followed baboons through ecological disruption and relocation, turning a behavioral study into a record of how a flexible society responds when its world changes. The limitation is not quality, but reach. Strum dismantled the crude model of primate politics and gave baboon social life far more agency. Yet her project did not produce the same combination of species-wide conceptual shock, global methodological imitation, and conservation mobilization that the strongest great ape studies would eventually achieve. Dian Fossey established the Karisok Research Center in Rwanda in 1967, between 2 volcanoes in the Virunga Mountains. Mountain gorillas were difficult to approach and dangerously few. By learning their movements and gradually habituating groups, Fossey made daily observation possible and assembled detailed life histories of animals previously reduced to frightening silhouettes. The scientific achievement in the conservation fight became inseparable. Karisoke documented gorilla families, communication, births, deaths, and transfers between groups while confronting snares and poaching. That continuity helped turn individual gorillas into known lives rather than replaceable examples. The research station endured beyond its founder and remains central to mountain gorilla protection. Fossey's case is formidable because the animals might not have survived without forceful advocacy. It is also complicated. Some of her confrontational tactics remain controversial, and her own research career was shorter than the longest projects here. Karasok became an extraordinary institution, but the field's greatest legacy must unite protection with a broader and more reproducible scientific transformation. Root de Galdikas arrived in Indonesian Borneo in 1971 and founded what became Camp Liki. Orangutans made almost every problem worse. They are largely arboreal, often solitary, and reproduce with extraordinary slowness. A researcher can spend a day beneath a canopy, receive one shower of chewed fruit, and still have learned remarkably little. That stubbornness eventually produced one of primatology's deepest records. Camp Liki accumulated more than 100,000 hours of observation and followed multiple generations. The work clarified long birth intervals, female ranges, male development, feeding ecology, and the loose social connections hidden beneath the orangutan's reputation as a solitary forest hermit. Galdikas also linked field science to rescue and habitat defense. That widened the project's consequence, but it complicated the evidence. Rehabilitation and supplemental feeding sometimes blurred the boundary between untouched behavior and life influenced by people. Few researchers matched her endurance. The strongest claim still requires a cleaner fusion of discovery, continuity, and methods that transformed the entire discipline. The strongest rival began at Mahale in western Tanzania. Toshisada Nishida started studying wild chimpanzees there in 1965 and helped establish the idea of the unit group, the stable community behind a shifting daily crowd. Chimpanzees use fission fusion society. Companions repeatedly split into smaller parties and reunite without losing the larger community. Mahale became a multi-generational scientific institution rather than one observer's expedition. Its researchers documented politics, hunting, grooming, maternal lines, communication, and local traditions. Behaviors common in one chimpanzee community could be rare or absent elsewhere. Strong evidence that chimpanzees inherit some ways of living socially, not only genetically. Nishida's claim is exceptionally strong. Mahale offers duration, rigorous team science, and a parallel chimpanzee record essential for testing whether any one community is typical. Yet the final criterion is combined consequence. One project would pair equally deep observation with an earlier conceptual rupture, a global change in public understanding, and a conservation movement built around that science. Jane Goodall is the GOAT of long-term wild primate field research. In 1960, at 26, she entered the forest beside Lake Tanganyika to study wild chimpanzees. She had no university degree and little institutional authority. What she did have was patience, an unusual eye for individual behavior, and a willingness to keep watching after the obvious story had failed. The chimpanzees initially fled. Credits came through an older male she called David Graybeard, whose relative tolerance helped other animals accept her presence. Naming individuals sounded unscientific to critics who preferred numbers, but the names served a serious purpose. They preserved identity, kinship, temperament, and history in a society where individual differences changed outcomes. Then came the observation that broke a comfortable boundary. Goodall watched a chimpanzee insert plant stems into termite nests, remove them covered with insects, and modify the stems by stripping away leaves. The important fact was not merely tool use, it was tool manufacture, behavior many scientists had treated as a defining human possession. That discovery would have secured a place in science, but it was only the opening. Chimpanzees hunted and ate other mammals. They shared meat selectively. They formed coalitions, reconciled after conflict, adopted orphaned young, and displayed personalities stable enough to shape relationships. The supposed line between instinctive animal and reflective human became harder to draw honestly. Long duration also destroyed the comforting version of the story. The same chimpanzees capable of affection and adoption could patrol borders, attack isolated rivals, and sustain lethal conflict between communities. Goodall's record did not replace the savage ape with the gentle ape. It showed a species with a disturbing range of social possibilities, including some uncomfortably familiar ones. Generations transformed observation into demography, the statistical study of births, deaths, survival, and population change. Researchers could compare maternal success, trace family lines, study infant development, and understand how disease or food shortages move through a known community. A discovery lasts a moment. A dataset that outlives its founder can keep answering questions nobody knew to ask. The project was not methodologically pure, and pretending otherwise would weaken the case. Early researchers used bananas to draw chimpanzees into view. Provisioning, meaning the regular supply of food by people, increased contact, encouraged crowding, and could alter competition while raising disease risk. The practice was ended, and later protocols placed far greater weight on distance and health controls. There is another limit. One community cannot stand for an entire species. This is where Nishida's Mahale work becomes essential rather than merely rivalrous. Differences between the sites helped reveal chimpanzee culture and prevented one famous population from becoming the universal template. The GOAT project is stronger because independent long-term studies could challenge it. Against Mahale, Goodall's advantage is not simply that she arrived first. Her early findings forced a revision of the human-animal boundary, while the continuing research converted that shock into multi-generational evidence. She also communicated individual lives without abandoning the harder patterns behind them, bringing public attention to primate minds on a scale field biology rarely achieves. That attention was turned outward. The research expanded from a small chimpanzee community to the wider ecosystem and the human communities around it. Conservation increasingly meant forests, watersheds, livelihoods, education, and local decision-making, not a fence drawn around charismatic animals. The scientific lesson was blunt. Chimpanzees cannot survive as isolated treasures in a collapsing landscape. Goodall therefore wins all four criteria in combination. Strum revealed negotiated baboon politics. Fossey made gorilla lives visible and defended them fiercely. Galdikas matched slow animals with astonishing persistence. Nishida built the strongest parallel scientific tradition. Goodall alone joined a foundational conceptual surprise, a continuing longitudinal record, global methodological influence, and conservation consequence at exceptional scale. Her public fame can obscure the most important achievement. The famous moments were repeatedly tested by ordinary days. Personalities became life histories. Family stories became population data. A startling tool became evidence for culture, ecology, and evolutionary continuity. The work kept moving from a compelling scene toward a harder question, instead of treating wonder as proof. The GOAT title matters because this field changed what counts as evidence about minds unlike our own. Jane Goodall did not erase the differences between humans and other primates. She made those differences impossible to defend with lazy assumptions. The lasting lesson is conservative in the best scientific sense. Watch carefully, keep the record, and let reality revise the boundary.